I'm Sarah Borgson-Keto, and in conjunction with NAREIT's REIT Week 2021 Investor Conference, I'm speaking today with Chris Benjamin, President and CEO of Alexander & Baldwin. Chris, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How would you describe local economic conditions in Hawaii as we emerge from the pandemic, and how are those conditions impacting your company?
Well, I think it's very well known that Hawaii has been very successful in managing COVID, but that it's done so by really shutting off its borders. So I think that everybody's aware that Hawaii had a big economic impact as a result of that. However, I think it's less well known how quickly the state is recovering. Our outcomes with COVID continue to be very, very strong. We have a very high percentage of our population already vaccinated. I won't quote numbers because I think by the time this airs, the numbers will be a lot bigger. But bottom line is we've been leading the way in management of the disease and now in vaccinations. And so our tourism levels are back to 70% of pre-COVID numbers already. And we're only in May as we're recording this. And so I think that as we get into the summer, we may well be back to pretty close to pre-pandemic numbers. So that's great news. Now, we did have a big impact from the shutdown earlier in the pandemic. We were probably impacted disproportionately just because of our reliance on tourism. That was mitigated by the fact that our portfolio is not heavily tourism dependent, but nonetheless, everything in Hawaii does depend to a degree on tourism. So I think the good news about that is that we're going to have a disproportionate recovery this year. Our improvement in same-store NOI quarter over quarter was tremendous in the first quarter. We expect continued progress in that. And so, the silver lining for us is we got beaten down a little bit more than other markets, but I think we're going to have a disproportionate recovery this year, and we're feeling very good about the trend.
Can you update us on progress regarding simplifying Alexander & Baldwin's business model?
Yeah, that's been a silver lining of COVID, actually, is the demand for land in Hawaii. And our simplification efforts are largely about selling off some of our legacy assets, both operating businesses and also land, development land and raw ag land. And while we're always very careful about predicting the timing of transactions, and I can't predict with certainty when we will be complete with that process, I will say that we've got tremendous interest in Hawaii land assets and a lot of momentum toward completing our simplification over the next year or so.
Acquisition activity has been on hold for a while now. Do you anticipate any changes on that front?
I definitely do. I think that we are going to be back in the acquisition game this year. One of the things that we did about 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago, was we redirected our investment team to focus more on dispositions because we recognized the importance of simplifying our business model. And so our team that had just finished placing about $250 million of proceeds from a Maui ag land sale in late 2018 pivoted to being mostly focused on positioning our assets for disposition. They've done a great job of that, monetizing many of our non-core land assets and teeing up or positioning the others for sale, as I just referenced. We're optimistic that we'll make progress there. And now that team is beginning to shift back toward the acquisitive mode and looking at the market and identifying acquisition opportunities. And so I'm increasingly confident that we'll be placing some capital this year. And importantly, we've already made enough progress in strengthening our balance sheet that I think that we can be looking to use our balance sheet for acquisitions.
Alexander & Baldwin was a 2020 Silver recipient of NAREIT's Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Award. Why are those issues so important to your company?
It was actually one of several awards we received last year for our DEI and ESG efforts. And the reason it's important to me is that I believe A&B is a company that has always demonstrated its commitment to the community. Over the past 150 years, that's been a hallmark of our company. We adopted the slogan a few years ago, Partners for Hawaii, and we define that as partners for everybody in Hawaii, not just our tenants, not just our employees, although those are obviously very important stakeholder groups, but also looking beyond that at how we can support other community organizations and how we can make sure that we're modeling the right behavior in terms of giving back to the community, supporting the environment, and supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just to wrap up quickly, let me say that I believe there is a lot of work to be done in advancing DEI, and it has to start with those of us who have privilege, creating a safe environment for the discussion of discrimination and the systematic undoing of it, because it is a system. It is not bad people doing bad things. It's an antiquated system creating obstacles for people that deserve opportunity. And so we have to work very thoughtfully and proactively to unmantle that or dismantle that and make things better.
Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much.
And for more news and information from REIT Week, be sure to visit NAREIT's website, REIT.com.